Freedom is not free. Discover what it takes. It's time to tap and move forward.
Hello and welcome to Tap and Move Forward. I'm your host, Lynn Shelley. Today's guest has had a decorated and impressive career, starting out in security forces, moving into a K-9 unit, continuing into leadership roles, making the rank of E7, and then commissioning as an officer. And at the same time, she competed as a bodybuilder and now is an IFBB Pro bodybuilder. She has some incredible insights on the powerful art of leveraging suffering for personal growth. Here's the interview with Riley Marx Burns. Why did you join the military and how old were you?
I was actually 15 when I signed into the delayed enlistment program. I was 14 when I first talked to a recruiter, and I talked to my parents and they wanted me to wait. So when I turned 15, I was like, all right, I waited and now I'm ready to go talk to the recruiter.
At 15?
Yes.
What?
I don't know what it was, but they had came to my school and they talked and I was like, I can get out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa by doing this and traveling and getting my school paid for. I'm going to do it. So I did. I went and talked to him, and it was right after 9/11. So I think that probably played a pretty big factor in it as well. So I went when I was 15. I stayed in the delayed enlistment program for 3 years, and as soon as I turned 18, I signed my papers and I left 3 months later.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's always been something I wanted to do, and I knew that's what I wanted.
Why do you think it was so important to you to join the military?
Honestly, I think because of after 9/11 and seeing all that was changing in the world, that was a big factor, but also the benefits. I mean, I knew I had older friends that were either going to school and then they weren't going to school, college, because it was too expensive, or they would rather work. And then I had read lots of stories about people having debt because of their schooling. So I saw that I could go to school for free while I was in the military and get everything paid for. And that was one of the biggest driving factors as well. And it paid off because I got my bachelor's degree and I became commissioned now because of the schooling that I've gotten in the Air Force. I've never paid a dime.
It's amazing. Tell me about the delayed enlistment program. I've never heard of that.
So the delayed enlistment program is something that it was back then they could do it. I actually think that their policies have changed where they can talk to you and they can get you interested, but they can't actually like sign you on. So I almost did a fake type enlistment when I was 15, signing some papers saying that that's what I wanted to do. So you just kind of sit in a program. I would go do PT and stuff with the other recruits, even the ones that were about to leave. And I would go meet with my recruiter. I can't remember how often it was, but I would say probably once every couple of months I had to go just so he could make sure I was still on board. And we would do events, like we would go bowling or go, like I said, PT, stuff like that. And it was just somewhere to sit and wait, really. And they couldn't put in for my job until I was 18, which I turned 18 on May 18th of my senior year in 2004. So then that's when they put in for my job. And then I ended up leaving August 30th, I think, to go to MEPS and everything, because I had gotten my job that quick. But also the delayed enlistment program allowed me to, if I would have only stayed in for 6 years, then it gives you, no matter what, you have an 8-year enlistment. So if you only do 6 years, that means 2 years you can be called back to active duty if need be. Well, because I was in the delayed enlistment program for 2 years prior, then that counts as those 2 years. So if I would have wanted to get out at 6 years, I would have spent my 8. Does that,
yeah.
Was that clear with that? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you feel like being in that program, it helped prepare you for basic training in your military career?
I think maybe for the military career, because it's a lot of hurry up and wait, which is what the military is. But when it comes to basic training, maybe a little, but there's so much unknown, and there's so many variables that you could encounter when you get to basic training. Like, I have friends that they got phone calls every week, or they got a snack every week or whatever, but I got one phone call the entire time I was in basic training. So I don't think anything can really mentally prepare you for it, because there's so many variables. You may have a good TI, or not a good TI, I shouldn't say that. You may have a less strict TI than what others will. I think they're all good in their own way, but it just kind of depends. And it's all what you make of it, and it's how you go in, the attitude that you go in with. If you go in with an attitude of this is going to suck, well, it's probably going to suck. But if you go in with that open mind and you're like, you know what, this may suck, but I'm going to use it to my benefit. It's all on perspective and your outlook.
I love that. This may suck, but I'm going to use it to my benefit.
Yeah.
Is that the advice you would give to a newly enlisted member?
I think so. Yeah, it would be patient, because it is a lot of hurry up and don't wait. Have an open mind, because there's so many different things that could happen, and embrace the suck, because it's gonna suck. I mean, there's no way around it, but it's how you choose to deal with the suck that is going to change your path. I guess I would also say take advantage of everything the military has to offer, because there is so much opportunity, and you may be in a shitty location that you don't like, but you got to use it. You got to make the best out of it. Like, my first duty station was Cheyenne, Wyoming. I was from Iowa. I wanted nothing more than to get out of Iowa and go see the world. And they moved me 2 states away. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But I got there, and it was cold, but I got to go skiing. I learned to snowboard. I did a lot of stuff. We went to the mountains. So it's just make the best out of any situation you have.
And you went right into security forces.
I did. Yes, ma'am.
Was that your choice?
It was, which a lot of people are surprised, because people don't seem to want to be security forces. It was number 1 on my list. I was always interested in law, so it was just kind of something that intrigued me. I think right before I joined, or right before I actually came in, it was probably about 2 weeks, somebody had told me that I was going to be working the gates, and I was like, well, that's not what I want to do. And I tried to change my job. My second choice was firefighter, and my third choice was an aerial gunner. And I tried to change it. My recruiter was like, we already have you slotted. It's too late. You'll be fine. So that was kind of what I went in with. But again, I made the best out of it. So, and I ended up loving it. It was really hard. Now that I've commissioned, I'm changing jobs. So it was actually hard on me. It was a lot rougher than what I thought it would be. It was leaving security forces. It was pretty bittersweet, because I've been security forces for 14 years. It's what I know, but it's good for a change.
And while you were security forces, you worked yourself into a canine unit as well, right?
I did. Yeah. I was regular security forces for a couple years, and then one of the kennel masters actually was talking to some different troops about the different things of canine, and I got really interested. So I started volunteering out there, and I would ride patrol with a couple of the canine units, the canine handlers. So I would ride patrol with them, and then I would do training with them, and I decided to put in for it. And it took a couple months to maybe a year by the time that I put in and actually got to go. But I was selected, and I got to go to training for that in 2009.
How did you enjoy that?
I loved it. I actually credit a lot of being canine to why I'm still in the military. I think that it was what I needed at the time. I needed that change of pace and a difference, and something to care for a little bit more, which was the dog, and it was super rewarding, and it's amazing getting to work with a canine partner. It was the best job. It was amazing.
Did you leave canine then to commission?
Kind of, not really. So after you have become a tech sergeant or an E6, they don't really keep you in the kennels just because that's just the way canine works. Unfortunately, you make rank and you're kind of moved out of the kennels. So they only have handlers that are senior. I guess right now they're taking A1C. So A1Cs, senior airman, and staff sergeant. So if you're a tech sergeant and you're still getting to be in the kennels, then, well, you got lucky. So I was one of the lucky ones. I was able to stay in the kennels. First, I was in Korea and I became a trainer over there. And then I came to Japan and I made tech sergeant. And I briefly left canine to go to investigations because there wasn't a spot for me. But then I ended up being able to move back into the kennels as a tech sergeant to be the trainer of the kennels in Kadena, Japan. So I was able to go back, which was great. And I stayed there for another 2 years. And then they moved me from being canine to being a flight chief for the regular security forces unit. So I switched back over to being a flight chief. And that's kind of when I put in for my commissioning package and got accepted. So no, I didn't leave canine when I commissioned. I had kind of already had to leave because I had been canine for so long that it was time for me to do a different job for career progression.
Why did you decide to commission?
Commissioning was something that I always wanted to do. I just held off on it a bit longer than what I planned on because I was canine, because I did love the job and I loved working with the handlers and training and working with the dogs. So I held off on it. But then once I knew I was done in the canine career field, when they moved me to be a flight chief, I was like, all right, it's now or never. I've already waited pretty long to try to put in for OTS, that now it's time to do it.
And now, having experienced both sides, the enlisted and the officer, what kind of variation or differences have you noticed between the two sides?
I would say I don't have a whole lot right now because I did just commission in November. So right now I'm still kind of waiting on a class date for my new career field. So I'm kind of just doing odds and ends for the Air Force. I'm a dorm chief actually right now for a lot of the enlisted airmen that are in training at Goodfellow Air Force Base. So I don't have a whole lot other than being a second lieutenant is much like being an airman initially, because there are a lot of brand new second lieutenants that have just joined the military. They were never enlisted. They just came in commission. So it is different. It's different going from a master sergeant to a second lieutenant because I made a lot of my own decisions as a master sergeant. I had a lot of freedom to make those decisions because I had proven myself. And now I'm just in a bucket with all the other second lieutenants that may not have necessarily proved themselves.
Essentially like starting over again.
It is. It's very similar.
Are there things in your career in the military that have really surprised you?
I would have to say the amount of opportunities that we're afforded. There are so many different things or variations, places you can go, jobs you can go, TDYs you can go on, that it's not just your job that you're kind of in. You can just branch out all over the place depending. And it's a lot of networking. It's a lot of who you know and where you can go and how you can get there. And I would say the benefits as well. I knew what the benefits were coming in, but you don't really get to see them until you're using them. And then there's just so many things that the military is good for.
I absolutely agree. Are there times in your career where you felt like you dealt with your definition of failure, and how did you handle that?
I'm the type of person that gets mad at myself when it comes to failure. I am a perfectionist by nature. So anytime that I feel that I'm failing, I get mad, but it's a good kind of mad because it's the type of mad that makes me want to just throw everything I have into it and keep going. I would say I get over failure by consistently trying to be better and ensuring that I don't allow that failure to happen again.
So it's like a motivating mad versus like a shaming mad?
Yes, very much so. It motivates me to just be better.
What do you consider your greatest military accomplishment or your most meaningful experience, and why?
I would say getting the opportunity to lead airmen and have an impact on them. I've gotten multiple messages from previous troops thanking me for being hard on them, or for expecting greatness from them, or expecting them to do what they were supposed to. And I think that's the greatest reward that a leader could hope for. Initially, to be honest, when I was told that I was going back to be a flight chief of security forces, that was the one thing that I never wanted to do, because I worked with dogs. That's what I like to do. And they told me I was going to go be in charge of airmen, which was something I hadn't really done because I worked with dogs. And I didn't want to do it. I was like, this is not something I wanted to do. And then getting to do it was, it was the most rewarding job that I've ever had. If I could go back, I wish I would have probably done it sooner, actually, to get that experience and to be able to have the impact on those airmen, and just kind of, you can help shape their career just by your attitude and your perspective. So it's a daunting task, or it can be, but it's worth it.
Who was most influential during your career, and why?
I would have to say for the early years that it was my second supervisor, and it's not for a reason that you would expect it to be. It was more for the reason that it was someone I never wanted to be like. I had a pretty bad experience. She was not a good leader, and she did not treat her troops the same. She had favorites, and if you weren't one of them, well, you were going to suffer. So I think that I would say she was very influential, because I learned who to never be like. I learned that I need to treat everybody fairly and give everybody their shot. And for the latter years, I would say, after meeting my husband, he's always been a sounding board and a voice of reason for me. He was prior enlisted as well, so he is fully aware of how the military works. He's actually retired, but he's direct and he tells it how it is, which is nice. We live in a world of sugarcoating, and where everyone wants to blow sunshine up your ass and tell you all the great things. But that's not what we need. That's not beneficial for anyone. People need the truth, the raw and real truth. If they ever truly want to become better, or a better leader, a better person, a better airman, you need to know what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. Mostly you need to know what you're doing wrong, because you need to know how to fix it. So he has been someone that has been pretty influential. And then I'd also say my most recent commander and first sergeant, before I left the enlisted side, they were both some of the strongest and most amazing females that I have ever met in my military career. And they taught me a lot just by being who they were. They had the strength and courage to be who they were, who they wanted to be, without taking shit from anyone or backing down because they were females or because of a social norm. There's a lot that they taught me that they probably never even realized, just because they were who they were.
Have you recognized any challenges being a woman in the military?
Yeah, I can't say that I've not ever had any negative experiences in the military, because I have. I came in 2004, before the big push for sexual harassment and sexual assault was what it is now. So I was never going to let anything like that deter me from staying in. I came in for a reason, and I was not going to let anybody, decide my fate in the military. I'm not going to back down from you, and I'm not going to back down from what I want to do. I am going to continue on, and I don't care what you think or how you feel about me, because I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me.
Your experience now in the current climate, though, is that that's shifted quite dramatically. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, I would say, I mean, since probably about 2012, the Air Force has made, the military in general has made a huge push to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen. And you still kind of hear stories here and there, but leadership will be on your side if something is truly happening that you need to get away from, or if there is any sort of, this goes for males and females, it's not just females, but that sexual harassment in the workplace, it's not just a military thing. It is just a thing that happens, unfortunately, but it does. So if you ever find yourself in that kind of situation, there are so many different avenues that you can go, and the military has so many different sections and stuff that you can go to try to make those complaints and to get away from that, because nobody deserves to work in a work environment that you have to deal with that, or that's even toxic in general. Nobody should have to work in that kind of environment.
I absolutely agree. I enlisted in 2011, so my experience has been very much inside of that time frame that you've been talking about. And I've told a number of women that the military is a wonderful place to be as a woman. As far as my experience has been, I have never felt like I was judged based on my gender, but I was judged based on my capacity at my job. And
Yes.
100%, that's what mattered, how I showed up to work every day. And I've even seen where we were all given opportunities over and over again to see the documentary, The Invisible War. And my commander even took me aside and told me, if you ever see any issues with this, I am here for you. I have never felt anything but support for my experience inside of the military.
Yeah, there's a lot of new procedures and stuff that they do, and we've really come a long way.
Bodybuilding has become an important aspect of your life.
Yes, very much so. So I started bodybuilding when I got stationed in Japan. So I got stationed in Japan in May of 2013. It was something that I always wanted to do. I'd always, growing up, I played sports since I was 5. So even in high school, all throughout, I've been an athlete. And I would look at the magazines of the fit girls in the magazine. I didn't want to be like the skinny girls in the magazines. I wanted to be the ones with the muscle in doing that. So I've lifted ever since I was 14 years old. And most of that is accredited to track, because I ran track, and our coach had us in the gym about 3 times a week, lifting weights. So that just kind of followed me into the Air Force. I had always done it. And then I got to Japan, and they actually had military bodybuilding shows. And I found out about it, and I hired a coach who was an IFBB Pro bodybuilder. Her name is Zoe Lindsay. So I hired her shortly after I got there, within a couple months. And I actually met my husband through her as well, because she was his coach too, and he was competing. So that's how we met. And then I did my first show on my birthday of 2014, May 18th, 2014. And after that, I was just hooked on it. And I would say, I do credit the military a lot for being able to compete. And I am now an IFBB Pro bodybuilder as well. I compete in women's physique. And I think I may drop back down into women's figure, but that's besides the point. I credit a lot of my self-discipline and willpower to the military, because as a female, we have to diet for quite a bit longer than a male. So I have gone through, every time I do a show, I go through about 6 months of dieting. And that is, no junk food, no alcohol, eating nothing outside of your plan. So if I didn't have that self-discipline to go through, those 6 months of extreme dieting and grueling workouts and excessive cardio, I probably wouldn't have made it this far.
What do you think it is about the military that helped you to learn that discipline?
I would say probably going back to embracing the suck. I know I keep saying that, but it's true. You have to embrace the suck to get anywhere in life. It's really all about suffering. Who can suffer the most? Because the person who suffers the most, you're going to get the farthest. Whether that comes to military, suffering and staying in that job that you may not like just so you can get a better job, or so you can cross train into a different job. You have made it through the hard part to get there. When it comes to suffering, when you're starving and all you want to do is eat, and you know that you can't because you have to get to this crazy low body fat percentage to be on stage and win, you have to go through a certain amount of suffering. So who can suffer the most? The person that can, you're gonna do well.
I almost think it's the person who can suffer the most meaningfully, because there's a purpose behind the suffering at that point. There's a reason, there's a goal you're working towards. And so instead of just an emotional suffering, or like I've mentioned before, like shame spiraling, you can suffer in that pot forever, just turning. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't really get you any progress in life. But if you're suffering in alignment towards your goal, your capacity to reach that, or even faster, is exponentially higher.
Yep, very much agreed.
Are there other behaviors or skills that you learned in the military that have impacted your life?
Kind of stuff that I've already went over, but I would say that the new thing is the structure. I think life is very much about structure, discipline, and enduring, the ability to endure suffering. But structure is extremely important in the military. If you don't have structure, if you don't have a chain of command, then everybody's all willy-nilly everywhere. You need that structure. And it's not just in the military, it's in life too. If you don't have that basis, that discipline basis, then I feel like anything can be lost at any point in time. But if you do get a little bit lost, you can always revert back to that baseline of that structure.
Are there any books, documentaries, or historical figures that have been influential to you or in your life or your career?
I read a lot of leadership books, or I attempt to when I have time. But I'd say Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People has been a pretty big book to my life, because it's all about, communication and learning. It's the art of talking to people, which everybody needs help with, I think. And I know I sometimes have, communication struggles, or I think I'm getting my point across when I'm not, or I think I'm giving an answer where I'm really being nice, but really it comes off as not nice, or way more direct than what I wanted it to. So it kind of just lets you, it's the art of dealing with people. It lets you learn that you can say stuff in a tactful way and still get your point across, which I think is very important. And it explains why it's one of the longest published books. I mean, it was published 75 years ago, and it's still one of those books that just continues to sell. I think some other ones, like John C. Maxwell has some great leadership books, as well as Simon Sinek.
I love Simon Sinek.
Yeah. So I try to read those as much as I can. I don't always have the time to do it, but whenever I do, those are my top picks.
If you could give the new enlistees one superpower or skill set to help them in their career and the future of the military, what would it be?
I'd say this answer is a little bit more funny. It's not funny, but it's different than what a normal superpower would be. I would say it's the immunity to stay away from an alcohol-related incident, because alcohol kills so many careers. Alcoholic incidents kill so many careers. There are some people that do make it out after an alcohol-related incident, but they're few and far in between. There's so many people that get caught up in those incidents. And, you know, if you're underage, stay away from it. If you're of age, just be responsible and have a plan, because it is the number one career killer. And I'd say if you want to make the Air Force a career, you have to stay away from it, because you get caught up in it and your career can very well be cut short, especially if you're a brand new airman and you haven't really had the chance to prove yourself.
I'd even say, even if you don't intend to make the Air Force a career, because even if you're moving on to something else, or since I'm in the Guard, like people that have more of a 1 weekend a month type of career in the military can do nothing but support you in having a successful career no matter where you are.
Mm-hmm.
You lose a lot of the value that it can offer you if you stunt it with stupidity.
Exactly.
Just one stupid mistake.
Yep. And it can really cut it short. And with that being said, it can also really help you if you do have an alcohol problem, as long as you self-identify and it's not too late.
Yes, that's true too. Yeah, absolutely.
If you know that you have an issue, you can talk to your leadership and they can get you an ADAPT, and it's free. You can go for free and get it taken care of. But if you wait until it's too late, which is after you get a DUI, or, you know, after you maybe got in a fight because you were drunk at a bar or anything like that, then it's too late. I mean, you'll still go to ADOT, but whether or not you get to stay in, well, that's completely up in the air.
How do you respond when people tell you thank you for your service?
I say thank you for your support, because it feels really, I don't really know what the word is, self-gratifying. If I say you're welcome, that doesn't feel right at all, because I don't do it for the recognition from other people.
Right.
I do it for my own reasons, and because I believe in America and what we stand for, and being a patriot and paying my dues to be able to live in a country where we're free. So I do it for me. I don't want to tell somebody else you're welcome, because I'm sorry, but I don't do it specifically for you. I mean, I do it for everybody, but I say it's more thank you for your support.
Last question. What advice would you give to somebody who was interested in bodybuilding but just didn't know where to start?
I would say the number one thing is hire a coach. It doesn't matter how much you think you know, or how much you've read about. You don't know until you hire a coach. And I mean, take for instance me. You know, I have been lifting since I was 14. I thought I knew how to lift. I thought I knew how to eat right. And I did to a certain extent, because I did a lot of my own reading. But until I hired a coach, I didn't know anything. You know, she trained me on, and even my husband, he's a personal trainer. So he had helped me in form and stuff, that I felt muscles that I never knew I had. Or, you know, I trained something and it's like when I first went to one of the training sessions, I'm like, what have I been doing for all these years? I've been doing it wrong. You know, like you think you know enough and you just don't, because there's so much. And bodybuilding it's such a science, especially when you throw the nutrition aspect in. It's all science on how to look like that when you get up on stage. So going into a first time show, your best thing to do is hire a coach, because they will set out those baseline rules. They're going to teach you, you know, the stuff that you need to know about how to eat right. Even when you don't have a coach, a good coach will explain to you why you're doing what you're doing. That way, when you don't have the coach anymore, you can still do it on your own. But even the pros, I mean, the pros have coaches, because you're your own worst critic. So when you're dieting down and you're making progress, but you're looking in the mirror and you see yourself every day, you don't see those small changes in progress that your coach will, because you're your own worst critic. So the best thing to do is to hire a coach. And There's a lot of online coaches that have those cookie cutter little, routines and stuff. And that's not what you want. If there is a coach that's in your area, the best thing to do is get a coach that you can see face to face. If you have to do an online coach, then do it, but make sure that you research them and you've seen people that they've put on stage and that they're not just trying to collect money, because there's a lot of those out there too.
How do you find a good coach? How do you know if they're a good coach?
I would say ask people that compete, and anybody that has, an Instagram page that you can look at and see that they're producing, good results for people. I mean, even like myself and my husband, we coach people as well, but we don't have an Instagram page for the coaching aspect. So I'd say don't just rely on what people put on Instagram, but just ask around and see who's reputable. It is kind of hard to figure out, especially online. That's why I would say, if you can, do it locally, somebody that can be your face-to-face coach, because then you can really see if they meet with you, if they care to see how you're doing and all of that, if they have like weekly check-ins, then they're actually paying attention to everything that you're doing, so that they can make sure you're on track.
It is a crazy world, fitness. I've felt a number of frustrations myself in the past, and I started to try and really educate myself for a while. I felt like it was just as confusing or just as controversial as religion, because everybody has their different ideas. There's a million and one reasons. It just depends on who you ask. One person will say, this is the key and this is what you got to do. And the other person will say, no, don't do that. That's horrible. It's
overwhelming, the amount of information. And now, it's this new fad. So everybody is instafit.com, or their page is something fit. And it's just, everybody is trying to capitalize on the fitness industry right now. It comes down, like I said before, it's science. So it comes down to what works for you. The same thing that works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you. So that's why having a coach that knows that kind of stuff is good, because they deal with multiple different people that have different types of metabolism and different types of injuries and stuff. And a good coach can work around those issues and really just get you to where you want to be. And that's what I said, like with the cookie cutter, nutrition, what works for one person is not going to work for the other. So if somebody's just giving you that cookie cutter nutrition or cookie cutter workout, they're not doing it for you. They're doing it to make money.
That's great advice right there.
Yeah.
Do you have a website or something for your training?
I don't. My husband and I, we just kind of go off of email. We're both on Instagram. His email, we normally go through his email. It's burnstechp@hotmail.com. And our Instagrams are, his is Sky Cruiser Superlution. And that's because we have a lot of cars. We like cars. He has a Nissan Skyline. We have a Toyota Land Cruiser. We also have a Toyota Supra, and then we have an Evo 10. So that's kind of where he's a car guy, and I am a car girl by default because I'm married to him. But so he has all the cars in there. And then my Instagram is Riley Marx Burns _IFBB Pro.
Is there anything I've missed?
Nope, I don't think so. I think we've covered a lot. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak. And, I think it's great what you're doing. I hope that, people are inspired to join the military, because it is honestly the best decision that I've ever made in my life. I knew I wanted to do it. I'm glad I did it, because I've gotten so much from the military, and I have no idea where my life would be if I didn't join the military, but I can imagine it wouldn't be near as good. You know, I've gotten to travel so many places. I was in Wyoming, and then I did presidential security in Washington, D.C., and then I was in Korea, and then I was in Japan, and I still have a whole lot more of career to go. So, and I've gotten to travel all these places too, just because, you know, military gets 30 days of leave a year. You're not going to beat that anywhere. So the benefits are just amazing.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate your insights and your perspectives. You're exactly the reason why I have the show, is to really focus on and find those people that keep that positive mindset in all of the suck, that can really navigate through the suck and leverage it for their good.
Yes, it's very true. It is an art too. You can't just jump right into it, but if you have an open mind, you can go really far.
Thank you again.
Yes, thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and found a new mindset to help you excel. I love how Riley focused on the art of suffering and learning to endure in difficult situations. This is what leads us to excel. Meaningful struggle is the path to excellence. What areas of improvement have you been resisting? Where can you embrace discomfort a little more, even if it's just 5% more? For information on Riley Marx Burns, please visit www.tamfpodcast.com/IFBB. If you would like to share something you learned or to make suggestions for future episodes, please visit the Tap and Move Forward website or social media sites.